The corner outfield, and one of the top three, we won't tell you where he lands, but one of the top three corner outfielders in Major League Baseball was actually a center fielder last year. I think two of the top five were actually center fielders, and they are moving to a corner. So you're going to hear that on Wednesday. But for the Monday show, we are counting down from 20 to 11. We ranked 20 corner outfielders. We're going to give you that. Also, quick thing on the Luka Doncic trade, and a lot of people are wanting to play the what's the MLB
Yeah.
comparison to this, including Brent Rooker, which I thought was pretty funny. He loves embracing debate and all that. So we've got that to talk about as well, and then I've got a last word. It's the Just Baseball Show. As always, it's brought to us by our fine folks at BetMGM today, Monday, February 3rd. Jack Aram, how you doing? You went to the Florida State Fair on
Yeah.
Sunday. Was that great?
It was great. That's one of my favorite things in the world is like carnival games and stuff like that. So it was the last day. Had to get it in. Especially while the weather's this nice. So yeah, it was a blast. It's
I,
legitimately my number one like hidden favorite thing to do.
I asked you if you want a big stuffed animal to have it on your lap while we
Oh,
recorded. Do you
it's
can
right
you
up
get
there.
one?
We got two. We got two.
Can you stand up and grab
Yeah.
it?
Ah, it's way up there. Like, you're gonna make me go. Okay, fine. One second.
Yeah, dude, stand up. Come on. This is for the YouTube crowd. He's walking away right now. Pick
Uh,
it up. Oh, you actually got to hold that. That's an alien,
We
dude.
got
That looks
two. There's
great.
another one as well. It was like the break the glass bottles and then the flat rim, the flat basketball shot with like the
Yeah,
rim bent. Yeah, that's my shit. Like I love that.
really.
Yeah, it's a wasted talent, but it's my shit for sure. I'll
No
be
talent
honest.
is a wasted talent. You just got to find the right opportunity to showcase that talent. You found the right opportunity, so you go every year and you win a big alien.
Yeah, it's great. I pay $10 to be able to play the game. Then when you succeed at the rigged game, you get a 5 cent, stuffed animal that you won't know what to do with. And I guarantee the other ones outside right now, by the time we're done with this episode, our German Shepherd will have ripped it to shreds. I can guarantee that.
So keep that one in a safe spot in your office.
Yes,
I think
that's
that's a
why it
good
was
one.
up there. That's why
Yeah.
it was up there.
I met Kona last weekend too. Great dog.
Great
Great
dog.
dog.
Hates
Kona.
baseball though. If that's on the TV, she's losing her fucking mind. Like
But it's
it's
just the
it's
center
crazy.
field camera shot. We were watching
We're,
the Lidom Championship, and it's just when they're showing the pitcher throwing the baseball, like the center field camera shooting to home plate, is when
she
she
freaks.
goes
She freaks.
ballistic.
Yeah, we got to work on that. And totally calm for the Caminero home run. Bat was flying 400 feet in the air. I think she was off wandering somewhere else. So we're working on it.
She was good. Hey, weird last night. I, for some reason, went to bed early on a Saturday night, and I say for some reason it's because I was a sleepy boy and I just wanted to go to bed at like 10 p.m. But unfortunately, at like midnight, Luka Doncic got traded from the Mavs to the Lakers. Anthony Davis is going to Dallas. It was probably, for my money, the biggest sports trade that I've ever seen. This is a guy that has made five straight All NBA teams, and he's
Yeah.
25 years old. So we're talking about a Hall of Famer, maybe a top 40 player ever when it's all said and done, if he keeps tracking like this, getting traded when he's 25 years old. So
Yeah.
naturally, the baseball world woke up on Sunday and tried to put together this comp. And we got some text from Peter, and he was like, "Hey, you guys should talk about the craziest trades ever." And like I think the closest thing that has ever happened is probably the one that Peter sent us, which was
Yeah.
Alex Rodriguez
For
going from
sure.
Texas to the Yankees, Alfonso Soriano, and I think a player to be named
It
later.
was
Who was it?
Joaquin Arias, prospect, shortstop prospect Joaquin Arias.
Cool. Is that, did you Google that, or is that just a deep cut? I have a baseball problem thing.
No, 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 no. I was probably doing the Alex Rodriguez like career progression dive 4 days ago after we were talking about Westminster Christian on the call up.
Okay.
I went through the whole like step by step, like how quickly did he fly through each level, which was absurd.
Yep.
Essentially, skip through the minor leagues. Just fun to kind of look back on those careers, but that is one of the more bizarre trades. And just remembering that he was initially going to go to Boston. There was like a negotiation to lower the value of the contract.
Yeah.
That got blocked by the PA, MLB PA. Like there were so many wrinkles to that
Right.
really fascinating. And then it ultimately being that trade, I think that had to be the most like league shattering trade. Soriano was playing at an extremely high level, but he was also super young too. So there's
Yeah.
not really this direct comp because baseball is so weird and different. But now with the money in the NBA, and I think how frequently stars can walk, probably figured Luka was gone, and after next year with the
Or
player
signing a
option,
super max. He was going to be eligible to sign a super. It's just,
it,
it was a bizarre trade that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And Ryan Russillo was an all time character trying to wrap
mhm,
his head around it. So, yeah, it was just bizarre. But, like, Yeah, Soriano went 40-40 in Texas. Is that right?
He went 40-40 in Washington.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think I'm almost positive he went 40-40 for the Nats.
Huh. I thought he went
I'll pull it up
40-40 in
right now.
Texas. My first memories of Alfonso Soriano were as a Texas Ranger, but
I mean, he was a national for 1 year, which is the craziest part. And I think that was the 40-40 year, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pulling it up right now.
huh.
Soriano in looking. Yeah, the 40-40 year was in Washington. 46 home runs, 41 bags.
And his
He in New York was 39-41,
wow.
38-35. He was close so many times, but yeah, he did not do it in Texas.
One of the underappreciated players of that generation that I, by the way, last offseason at Lidum in San Pedro de Macorís sat like 3 seats away from. And I was like, dude, this is a really cool experience sitting, but I guess a couple seats over from Alfonso Soriano. There were a couple other trades that jumped to the forefront of my mind here, like the Prince Fielder for Ian Kinsler thing was also
Yeah.
weird at the time, but it
But like
wasn't
even
that.
then, even then, it's just not the same caliber
No,
players being swapped here. It's really good, it's really fun, but
right.
baseball's too weird. Not weird, but baseball's too different. Like NFL, you just get like players traded for middle round picks all the time,
Conditional
which is
sixth
bizarre.
round pick. This guy
Yeah,
was a second team All Pro last year. Why?
and in baseball, you're going to get really good player traded for a ton of prospects, right? So it's
Yep.
rare to get the player for player. I think for sure the closest comp has to be the Soriano, A-Rod, comparison there. I don't know if there's really going to in the modern in the last 30 years or so. I don't
Right.
think there's going to be anything that's close to that.
I don't think so. And then that unlocked the world of the abstract and the hypothetical trades. And, everybody was kind of putting together, oh, it's Bobby Witt for Mike Trout. It's Bobby Witt for Mike Trout.
Uh,
I actually thought Herb Lawrence, who, by the way, some fun news, Herb and Ryan Herrera are going to be doing a great project, Chicago based. It's going to be a Chicago based podcast. A lot more information on that to come in the coming weeks, but really excited to add
yeah,
Herb and Ryan Herrera to the Just Baseball Network. Ryan been doing a great job as a contributing writer so far as well. And Herb gets to dip his toes back into the podcast page, which he's so darn good at. But I saw Herb Lawrence mentioned it's Bobby Witt Jr. for Manny Machado. And that's probably what it is. Because I think Anthony Davis is comparable to Machado, where he's missing some time right now, but when he's on the field, he's still Manny freaking Machado. I
yeah.
heard you and Peter talk about that last week.
Exactly. I think that's probably the closest comp. People are talking Trout, but like AD's been a little bit more available than Trout, I think. So that's probably a good comp at this point because Machado, I still think could play at, a superstar level. Maybe Trout can too this coming year. But yeah, I think that's the closest one, and we'll never get anything like that in baseball, probably ever. So
Ever.
that's the difference in sports.
Ever. So now we can talk about the corner outfielders. And let's start with the honorable mentions. Again, we're doing 20-11 on this episode, and then you got 10-1 on the Wednesday show. That'll be Peter and I. Our honorable mentions, we've got 5 of them. Wilyer Abreu, the Boston Red Sox. Taylor Ward of the LA Angels. For now, I don't know what's going to happen there. Nolan Jones on a bounce back, we think, of the Colorado
Hmm.
Rockies. Lars Nootbaar, the St. Louis Cardinals, and Adolis Garcia, another guy on a bounce back from the Texas Rangers. If you had to pick one of those 5, who's having the best year? Abreu,
Oh,
Nootbaar, Adolis, Nolan Jones, Taylor Ward.
that's a really tough one. I,
And
I really, I really am betting on the Nolan Jones bounce back because if you look at, the year that he had, just 2 seasons ago now, as the next one comes up, but like I think it's on a different level of, and I know he's playing at cores, but I think it's on a different level of like what we were seeing from some of these other guys. I think you could say Adolis too, but I think Adolis you could kind of see the age curve, whereas Nolan it was, Nolan Jones was just dealing with back issues, and now he's healthy, hopefully, and ready
yeah,
to go. Lars, I think he is what he is at this point. We've been talking about the Lars Nootbaar breakout. Everybody who loves the analytics that we'll look at too. Like Nootbaar is definitely just one of those guys that checks the boxes, but I don't think after this many games in ABs, this magic Nootbaar breakout's going to happen. So I would bet on Nolan Jones, but he's probably also one of the more volatile options there. And then Ward is also one of those, you know what you're getting, solid player. But in terms of upside and who I'm just going to bet on it, I think Nolan Jones turns in the best season this coming year.
so I am I don't know. I lean Adolis when I think about it, just because this guy is one season removed from 35 jacks, 107 driven
Yeah,
in a Gold Glove caliber season. And right, he did win a Gold Glove. And whenever I see a guy grade out as a very strong defender in a corner outfield, and he's flirting with 40 homers, I'm bought in on you as a player. And what he did in the postseason in 23 en route to that World Series championship was absolutely amazing. And I'd go as far to say that Adolis Garcia had one of the 5 to 7 most disappointing seasons in 2024
for
for me
sure.
personally, just because I was so freaking excited to see what this guy can do on the heels of 39 and 107 and a gold glove in right field, because he is fun to watch in right as well. Um, I don't know. I want to say Adolis, but I think I'm with you on Nolan Jones. I also want to give Wilyer Abreu some love too,
That's
because
the thing. He's also very, very safe, and in a good way though too.
he's safe, but he's also kind of the odd man out when we're talking about the long-term vision of the Boston Red Sox
Yeah.
outfield. It's, oh, Jaron Duran's going to handle left, and hopefully you extend him. Roman Anthony, the top position player prospect in baseball, seemingly consensus now, and maybe the top prospect in all of Major League Baseball. He's going to handle another spot. And then is it Sadon in center? Is it going to be somebody else in center? Is Christian Campbell going to play a corner outfield? We're putting together this vision board for the Boston Red Sox over the next 5 years, and it just doesn't really account for Wilyer Abreu in any sort of circumstance, and that sucks.
It does suck because I think a lot of other teams he'd be a building block and they'd be really excited about him. But I think they're still going to find a way to keep him in the fold. And if not, I mean, you've got some awesome trade capital, which I'm surprised they still haven't seen them kind of make any move at this point, especially with Casa still in the picture as well. But you can't hold that against him when you're ranking the player, and the player himself I think is a very safe bet for close to a 3-win season. I think you can hope for 15, 20 homers, 15, 20 bags. And like, I think that's conservative. Like, I think people are hoping that he can do even more than that as he continues to mature. But I mean, and then solid defense as well. It's just like a safe, solid, sound player that so many other organizations would be thrilled to have with control in the corner. And I know the
Right.
Red Sox are thrilled to have him, but like, he's a luxury at this point, given where they're at in terms of the depth in the outfield, as you listed out.
So call me crazy. Could this be the Jordan Walker year or no?
I'm hoping. I mean, like I think he's got everything it takes. We talked about it. Like this is the dude that, flew through the minor leagues out of high school. The power was immediately evident. Like we've seen flashes of it at the big league level, had a great half at the big league
Yeah.
level, made mechanical adjustments and then just kind of lost it. I do think the ragdolling was a big part of it. And
Yeah.
now you have him in the big leagues. I'm not saying the Cardinals are punting the season. They're obviously still have talent and can, hang around in the wild card,
Yeah.
but I think it's a lot more tame. I think Jordan Walker's not playing early in the season with the fear over his shoulder that he could be sent back down to Memphis if he has a bad couple weeks. So I'm hoping that a Jordan Walker playing more free will it be a guy that's hitting 30 plus homers. And I think people do forget like over the last 2 years, he also had been getting acclimated to the outfield. And when you're struggling in the box for a little bit, and then you're also getting acclimated to a position you're not excelling at because it's totally new to you, I think things can kind of start to compound on you too. And then you're getting passed back and forth from Memphis to St. Louis. He's had to deal with a lot. Still
Yeah.
very young.
And remind me and correct me if I'm wrong, but 2024 was the season of the swing changes for Jordan Walker, right? I know you highlighted a tangible difference, and I think that was the 23 season
So
with
yeah, in
Jordan Walker.
23, he had the second half where you saw some mechanical adjustments and he
He looked
performed really
great.
well. And then he came back in 24 and kind of got away from those
He
again.
looked
And
like station to station,
mhm,
hyper mechanical, like
yeah.
nothing was really athletic and flowing in the swing. But I feel like at the tail end of the year, he sort of kind of got back to it. Am I wrong?
No, you're not at all. And what's
Okay.
crazy is, in 23 when we saw those adjustments, his final 40 games in 23, he hit 303, 372, 497, 10% walk rate, 22.5% K rate, and was just demolishing heaters. And it's like that's what he does, right? Is he going to be, a 300 hitter? No, but he's going to have stretches where he can do that, and ultimately he's going to settle in a spot where he's slugging. He's getting on base enough. That's what the one thing you want to see him still
Yeah.
continue to do is cut down on the chase. But he's going to hit the living crap out of the ball, and I thought that would carry over into what we saw, or at least carry over into the beginning of 2024, and it just didn't. But I 100% agree. When you saw him at the end of the year, it seemed like it started to come back again for him a little bit. So hopefully he can get that rolling out of the gate next year. He's
Yeah.
still 22. and he's not going to turn 23 until like a month and a half into the season. So it's a guy who's had a unique development process. We've talked about a lot of other players like that have been fast tracked, and his struggles, instead of those happening in the minors, have happened in the majors. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to totally alter your assessment of him as a player.
Nope. He's got time on his side as well. We do as well. We're going to do 22-11 in a moment. Before that, quick break. You want odds or evens?
Um, I'll take evens. I'll take evens because this one's interesting. Start
Okay.
right off the bat.
You go ahead.
Number 20, Jerickson Profar, Atlanta Braves. Thank goodness we have a team to refer to him to now, because if we did corner outfielders a little bit earlier, we probably wouldn't. Love that signing. We've talked about it. I think the market played out in a weird way for Profar. I think, a lot of teams are a little wary, multi-year deal for a guy that's coming off a career season. I get it. But I think Profar did a lot of things last year that you can look at and say, that is a totally different hitter, and you can't just chalk that up to a fortunate season. I think there's just such significant shifts in batted ball data that you can believe what he was doing. One of the smarter organizations in baseball are the Atlanta Braves. But the tough part with Profar is he's not a great defender. And that is become clear as he's kind of moved all around the diamond through the years and hasn't really provided a ton of value anywhere. But if you are mashing, it doesn't really matter. And the hope is that you just can settle in and not be a total liability in left. I think getting out of Petco, though, this is a guy that could easily hit 25 home runs, definitely 20 to 25. And I felt like it looks like most of the staff was in agreement there, except for Peter. Peter,
Yeah.
I can already hear Peter saying, I got to see him do it again.
Yeah.
And I get it. I
I
get
don't
it.
believe in the bat. Don't forget that one. I believe in the bat. I don't believe in the bat. That's his
I,
special. Peter
I got to
Apple's
see him
top
do it
100
again.
players. That's going
I
to go
got to see him do
triple
it again.
platinum. Yeah.
Yeah, he needs a repeat. I get it. But Fink had him at 20, Leo had him at 21, Eric had him at 18,
Yeah.
I had him at 18, you had him at 22, and Peter had him at 30. 30, 30. That, which means unranked, right? Is that unranked, or is that
Yeah, that would
30?
be unranked. I think we went 1 through
So
25
he
in
either
these
had him
rankings. Yeah.
at 30 or unranked. I get it, because it's you can say, oh well, the other 1,000+ ABs he hasn't been anything close to this, but there's a tangible shift in mechanics for sure. And you rarely see a hitter make pretty much 4 mile per hour leaps, across the board, 90th percentile exit velocity average, like everything, like hard hit rate skyrocketing, the
Yeah.
angles which he's hitting the ball, like elevating way more. You rarely see that kind of shift. To me, that's not like oh, he had a fortunate year. I think it's a drastic shift in batted ball quality. The highest hard hit rate he had ever had in a season prior to that, I believe was, and this was like a partial season, was 34%. He was 44% last year. I think it's legit, and I think he's going to sustain this type of offensive output for this deal with the Braves.
The difference was just drastic between 23 and 24. 23, you could make the argument he was the worst qualified player in Major League Baseball. He had a negative 1.6 WAR, and he bounced between Colorado and who am I blanking on? Who was he with at the end of 23?
End of 23?
Yeah, he was with Colorado for the majority.
No, I think if you're looking at year by year now here for Profar, it's
He
ooh,
played
yeah.
he played for somebody else in 2023.
Yeah, because it was Colorado, San Diego, and then somebody else, and then back to San Diego, right?
It was San Diego. 14 games in
Okay.
San Diego at
Okay,
the
that's
end of
what
the
it was.
23 season, but it was 111 games in Colorado, and he had a negative 1.7 WAR, a 680 OPS. It's not like he was an awesome defender in 24
No,
after being a terrible defender in 23. He's not a good corner outfield defender. But what you do have is this offensive resurgence. He's never going to strike out. Even in that terrible 23, he struck out like 17% of the time. He K'd 15% of the time this past year. But speaking to just the overall percentile jumps from 23 to 24, hard hit rate, like you just laid out, he was 12th percentile in Major League Baseball in hard hit rate in 23. He was 71st percentile in 2024. And when you look at average exit velocity, he was in the ninth percentile in 23. He was in the 80th percentile in 24. You don't see jumps like that.
not at age 30, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something you see maybe in prospects who like matured and went from horrible mechanics to like actually using their body and having an optimal swing.
Yeah.
You 86.5 mile per hour exit velocity to 91.1 is absolutely outrageous. And he had never had a season where he was above 87.5 in the average exit velocity department. So that's like if your average exit velocity is jumping by 4 miles per hour almost, and or more than 4 miles per hour, excuse me, and your 90th percentile is jumping by that much, to me, that is a clear mechanical shift. And you can see it too. I put out a poll on X because I was curious, and this is going to be one of the pieces I want to put out in the next couple weeks before the season. I was curious how many people thought that it was kind of a flash in the pan season for Profar or not. And I put out a poll and I said, like, this is what his numbers were last year. This is what he was in his career. If I set the over under, I think it was a 120 or 125 WRC plus. Would you
Yeah.
take the over under? I think I put it at 120. And if I'm not mistaken, the vast majority voted under.
Yeah.
And that was all I needed to put together this piece on the swing adjustments that he made. Very similar to the James Wood conversation about how he's just learned to sequence his lower half and everything. And I don't think you can ignore that when you see the uptick to that degree in batted ball data. And obviously the Braves are buying in on it too.
Yeah.
Because he had the chase, always at a low point. He
Yeah.
had the whiff, as you mentioned, always maintained. So this guy hitting for power now is pretty much the only difference he needed. He just needed to hit the ball harder. He
And
found a way to do that.
and the change came against non-fastballs. I mean, his numbers from 23 to 24 were pretty much the same against fastballs. 23, he hit 298 against fastballs with a 411 slug, hit 262 with a 434 slug against him in 24. The difference is breaking pitches. Breaking balls, Profar hit a buck 75 against in 23. He hit 272 against him in 2024. So in a 100-point jump in batting average against breaking balls, in a 120-point jump in slug against breaking balls. He was better against changeups as well. So the mechanical adjustments that you're pointing to, they clearly helped him in every aspect except the four-seam fastball, and he was already good at that.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the same thing with James Wood. For
Yeah.
Wood, he was crushing fastballs in double A, but he was not handling the secondaries as well. Wood was going kind of with like this short stride toe tap sort of hybrid. It's the same thing with Profar. He was going with a toe tap when he was in Colorado, was not working for him. It was just kind of sliding him forward. And then this past year got into a little bit more of a gather with that leg kick. And it's still moderate, but it's more of a gather. It's in rhythm. And I mean, from the right side, he gets up there a good bit. From the left side, it's a little bit more tame, and he's made it work. He's just way more athletic in the box if you compare it. It's way more rhythmic. And that gather, he seems to get into the backside and hold it. And
Yeah.
if you're going from a toe tap where you don't have your lower half very involved, and then a gather where you're actually able to get into the lower half and use the ground,
Yeah.
I think you can see why he was able to make such a significant jump batted ball wise. He literally went from not using his lower half
It's
to using
using
it
it.
really well. And that's how you stay back against secondaries, but it's also how you just create more force. And there's the result. So I'm really excited to do this breakdown because
Hmm.
it's very similar to the James Wood breakdown I did.
Excited to read it, and hopefully you can copy and paste a little bit and make your life easier there. Let's get to number 19 here, and it's Brian Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates. 2 months ago, I would have bet that Brian Reynolds was moving to first base. But after the trade for Spencer Horwitz, it seems like the Pirates are going to run Reynolds out again, probably in left field. And they've got an all-star left fielder. It's not because of the glove. I can promise you that. It's a
No.
tough watch in the outfield. We were all pretty even. His high ranking was 19 from Peter. His low ranking was 22 from you. The bat is too safe. He
Yeah.
does the same thing every single year. Defense, schmefense to a certain degree with Brian Reynolds because he is an all-star caliber bat. He's exactly what the Pirates need, and he was the first $100 million contract ever handed out in the history of the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's not a deal that you regret. They handed out a
No.
longer-term deal, just under $100 million to Brian Hayes, and that could be the type of deal that I guess you regret, even though the initial thought was he's too good of a
It's
defender to
safe.
ever feel bad about this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the
It,
bat
it
just hasn't been there.
it's wild how much so you have like one season in 2021 where the defense graded out pretty well from an outs above average perspective. I don't know why. When he was playing center field, Brian Reynolds was playing center field and
Yeah.
racked up 11 outs above average. And then, I mean, we saw the following years after that, not good in center and then even bad at points in a corner. And last year it was putrid in a corner, which is bizarre. But you see the difference, like offensively. he's going to be who he is. 24 home runs, 27 home runs, 24 home runs, 24 home runs. I mean, you can pretty much count on about, I think 2023 was a bit of a down year, but it was kind of down for the Pirates in general. It's just, I
Yeah.
think it was a little contagious there, but I think you can count on a minimum what he did offensively last season, a 118 WRC plus, and 25 roughly home runs, 24, I guess. If he's playing good defense, he's pushing closer to 4 or 5 wins, which is what we saw in 2021. But it seems like that ship has sailed. It's very quick drop off defensively. I'm hoping that, it's not like he's 35, right? He just turned 30. Maybe he worked on some things this offseason in a corner, can get more comfortable, but it seems like he's going to play a little bit of first base still too, which is the interesting aspect of this. I think they'll end up probably moving him a little bit. I don't know what happened defensively, but when you're getting 25 bombs roughly and solid slash line across the board, he's still got to be a top 20 corner outfielder in the game. Number 18, another new face for another team. Baltimore Orioles outfielder Tyler O'Neill checks in pretty even across the board as well. I would say the rankings on Tyler O'Neill and the big contracts, quote unquote, that the Orioles handed out this offseason. O'Neill put it together really nicely for the Red Sox last year and earned himself a payday. His best season since 2021 when he was, a clear star. And it seemed like he was going to be potentially a rising star in the game. Injuries, swing and miss had held him back, the last couple seasons, and then put it together in Boston, where this guy offensively was a monster from a power perspective. 241, 336, 511 slash line, 31 homers. He did strike out 33% of the time, close to 34% of the time, and the defense didn't quite grade out the same way that it has in the past. Like we've seen this guy play a really high level left field. This past year, they split some time with him in Boston between right and left, and he kind of graded out neutrally, maybe slightly below average. I think he can bounce back and be a little bit better. It is kind of weird going back and forth from left and right,
Yeah.
especially when you're playing at Fenway Park. So we'll see if O'Neill's speed and history still can translate into better defense out there. But I think you got to be really excited about the offense getting back to 30 home runs for the first time since 2021, and more importantly, playing more than 100 games for the first time since 2021. There are some big swing and miss numbers against righties, which we'll get to, but 31 home runs with what he brings to the table is definitely a top 20 corner outfielder as well.
Think so. I do worry about Tyler O'Neill's availability when it comes to the 25 season in Baltimore in particular. If another team signed him that had a little bit more depth and a little bit more to play with, I would be less concerned about Tyler O'Neill's lack of availability over the course of his career. But I mean, Baltimore is the team that, we're talking about like, okay, there's some fragility in the pitching staff. We saw Bradish go down and we were so darn encouraged. We saw Grayson miss extended time. Like, I just feel like this team needs to be at full health for them to be what they need to be, not just like what we want them to be, for them
Yeah.
to be a team that contends in the American League East. And if Tyler O'Neill gets hurt, you run into like this weird now what situation. And that just, it freaks me out a little bit. Like, I understand doing it 3 for 50 or whatever it was, but I don't know. It's just like that guy in that situation on that roster. Did it make all the sense in the world to me? I don't know. We'll find out.
And I think the lefty mashing was definitely a big appeal. But I'm with you, like him getting hurt. At least they have some depth with the prospects that they can plug in there, and young guys, not no longer prospects, I should say, that they can plug in there. But I have some concern that just it's a 3 year deal. It's not crazy long, but through the duration of this deal, especially when you get to year 2 and 3, if he's already struggling, the way that he has against righties, is that something that's going to get any better? I'm not sure. And if you look at the numbers last year against right-handed pitching, he struck out 35% of the time and he hit in the low 200s. I think it was 206 against right-handed pitching. Against lefties, he was a menace. And that's the one thing that you can guarantee you're going to get value from here. Against lefties, he hit 313, 429, 750. 16 home runs came from left-handed pitching, which is crazy when you think about the difference in at bats, right? We're talking about 156 plate appearances against lefties versus 320 plate appearances against righties, and he hit more home runs against lefties. So you're talking about potentially a fraction of the production against the type of pitcher that you're presuming he's going to see more of, because the Orioles don't shell out a lot of money, and they shelled it out, quote unquote, like for their version of shelling it out to a guy that could be very platoon dependent and skewing towards the short side. With the defense also taking a little bit of a step back last year, again, I think it can get better and get back to where he's been in the past. that's why I did say like I can understand and he should be a top 20 guy, but I also didn't vote for him to be. So I'm a little
Yeah.
hypocritical there. I had him at 21. I think Ryan Finkelstein's the guy who ended up really being the one that pushed him into the top 20. But again, it's
Mhm.
hard to keep a guy out with 31 home runs this past year.
Yeah.
But he is probably, if I were, running a front office and you asked me which free agent are you most concerned about that's going to get a multi-year deal on the position player side, it would probably be Tyler O'Neill, even more than Profar.
Yeah.
It might sound weird, but I think Tyler O'Neill's batted ball profile is way more concerning than Jerks and Profar's going into next year.
Interesting. And I also think the reason that he's where he is at 18 is because we were spread out pretty darn evenly on Tyler O'Neill. We were, all like in the 20-ish range versus
Yeah,
other
where he
guys
didn't, no
had
one
way
weighed
more
him down.
volatility. Yeah,
Yeah, no one
nobody
weighed him
weighed
down.
him down like Peter, so whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tyler O'Neill, we'll see how it all works out in Baltimore. But I'm with you. Like that actually would make me toss and turn a little bit more than Profar. But that also is probably accounting for Baltimore's situation when you're, comparing it to Atlanta's situation where Profar being good would just put them over the top. And it's like, all right, this is probably the best lineup in baseball. And I know that the Dodgers exist.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to number 17 here. And number 17 is Randy Arozarena of the Seattle Mariners. Arozarena was acquired by Seattle from Tampa near the deadline. Really good return for Tampa. Aiden Smith could be a top 100 guy when Arm's top 100 comes out in March. And Brody Hopkins, a guy that I love, an arm that was a two-way guy that
Funky.
converted to pitcher full time.
Funky
We're
guy. That was a
funky.
great return. That's always a funky arm slot that, of course, the Rays were all over. That was a fun return. But I will say, like, Arozarena has been a huge benefit to, we talk about how desperately the Mariners need bats.
Yeah.
He swung it pretty well, relatively speaking,
Yeah.
in a place where no one's really swinging it well in Seattle.
Yeah, and the numbers for him on the year: 154 games in his age 29 season. He had a 114 WRC plus slash 219, 332, 388. He's gonna walk. He walked 11.5% of the time. He walked 12% of the time in 23, and that's a nice change from what he did his first elongated stretch in Major League Baseball. Had 20 homers, had 20 bags. He's always going to be 2020. That's four consecutive seasons of 2020. He had 60 driven in, so not too opportunistic here, but overall, it was a good year for Randy. I will say the K rate jumped by about 2% from 24% to 26%. I just want to see him be good over the course of a full year in Seattle. Like, I want him to debunk this righties can't hit in Seattle thing. Julio's the guy to like actually debunk it, but I want to see Randy help him out because if Randy Arozarena is good, that that's amazing for Seattle with Julio, with Cal Raleigh, with that pitching staff. He feels like an X factor in that lineup.
For sure. It's just at the same time, you also look at Randy Arozarena, and I think you can kind of account for what you're getting at this point, which is another guy that's just been incredibly consistent. And even with the two different places that he called home in 2024, still ended up checking in at 20 home runs. And you look at the last 4 years, 20 home runs, 20 home runs, 23, 20. And it's 20 bags, 32, 22, 20. So it's very consistent. You look at the slash line, kind of the same thing as well. What's interesting is he actually and some guys don't love hitting it at the trop either, too, which we've talked about. Like
Yeah.
it's not as bad as it used to be, but he was hitting 211 for Seattle. So even, or excuse me, for Tampa. So after
Yeah.
the trade, getting to Seattle, with the slash line went from 211, 318, 394 to 231, 356, 377.
New life.
He actually swung it better in Seattle. So that's encouraging because, again, a lot of guys struggle to hit it there. And I know a lot of those games were on the road as well, but still, I mean, he was struggling. He goes to a place where you'd imagine it would not help the struggles. And he actually, was able to turn things around a little bit. So I think that's really encouraging. And then this is a guy that's always going to get a couple extra bonus points for what he's able to do in the postseason. I think Ty goes to the postseason
Yeah.
phenom. I just think you can't you can't deny that at this point.
Yeah, Ty goes to the postseason phenom. I had him at 17. So did Leo. Peter was the low guy at 21. Peter's all sorts of out of whack on this list. We got to is
The
intervention.
Profar one, the Profar one's the one that
Profile
drives
one
me
is silly. Like
30.
he's not. I think we did 1 through 25, but like not in the top 25, really. And I
Yeah,
think I was the other low guy at 22. But I mean, come on, man,
yeah, he'll explain himself on the next episode, I think.
silly
Um,
goose.
16, guy that was banged up and probably had one of his more down years, and it kind of puts things in perspective when you still see him do some good things through stretches, but not his best. Brandon Nimmo, the New York Mets, checks in at 16, and another guy that across the board the rankings were pretty solid. High guy was Leo at 13. Low guys were me and Eric at 17. Nimmo has been a model of consistency offensively until dealing with the plantar fasciitis last year. But then again, almost a 3-win season. Like
Yeah.
when you're down year and it's like, oh, his feet are messing with him. He's been playing through this, and you could tell that he was in pain at the end of the season and through the playoffs and like just gutting it out. Clearly a gamer. Still sprinting to first base after he walks for the most part. But he still put up his second highest home run total last year too, with 23. 24 was the highest in 2023. But the slash line 224, 327, 399, a 109 WRC plus, and a 2.7 F4. The 23 home runs and 15 bags. 15 bags was a career high as well, which is ironic considering he was dealing with some foot stuff. He will walk enough to where he's always going to have a solid WRC plus. We
Yeah.
saw that, right? Even when the average was at a career low and by a good margin, right? His career batting average is 261. He had 224 last year.
Yeah.
Walking at a near 12% clip, he's going to get on base at a 327 clip and be in a good spot. But again, in his career, he's got on base at a 371 clip. So it was down across the board for him. You hope that it was more health related and he turns in a better year next year. But even then, a down year is pretty much a 3 F4 season with 23 bombs. And I think a lot of guys would sign up for that.
All these youths care about, man, homers and bags, and he was one shy of his career high. Plantar fasciitis, and he still gave us 15 bags, which was a career high and 5x what he did in
Which is
2023.
nuts.
Also, plantar fasciitis and still playing 151 games. Like, that's a guy that cares. That's a
And
guy that
in the
wants to win.
postseason, like grinding it out, he's the guy you want on your team, like no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's he's a grinder, and the way that he grinds out at bats specifically too.
Yeah.
There's no way he's going to be bad. And that's like when you look at the contract, it's a lot of money that Brandon Nimmo got. 8 years,
Yeah.
162. I think it's probably a little bit more than I'd be wanting to pay. But this is a deal where I just don't think you can ever feel like you got completely burned. We'll see. Of course, if injuries get worse and worse with the feet, could be a problem. But I think what we saw last year is what you can kind of expect when he's not feeling good. Like I
Yep.
think he will his way to what we saw last year, I think, in the worst years.
First time I've brought this number up since I was trying to convince everybody that Tim Anderson was going to be a perennial all-star. BABIP. How about the
Mm.
BABIP difference here? BABIP for Brandon Nimmo when he put up a 130 WRC plus in 23. The BABIP was 324. It was 267 this year when he put up a
That's
109 WRC plus. So I don't know if that's batted ball luck or if it's, it was on the ground and he wasn't beating it out or if it was in the air. I have no idea what went into that. It was just kind of shocking to see what a near 50, 60 point difference in BABIP.
I always say, like, I think BABIPs are more earned than people give it credit for, right? Where, like, you go, oh, he was unlucky, the BABIP was low, or oh, it was unsustainable, the BABIP was high. In this instance, when you have a large sample of a guy's career and the batted ball data didn't change much,
Yeah.
I do think this is kind of some weird bad batted ball luck. And maybe through stretches he wasn't getting down the line as much, so maybe not beating out some of the hits that he normally does, but that's not a huge part of his game anyways. But when you look at average exit velocity, it was the highest of his career,
Hmm.
91.9.
Hmm.
And so a guy like that, you look at the expected batting average was 244. Still down a little bit, but
Yeah,
if
but
he hit
close.
220 or if he hit 244, his slash line would have been closer to like a 115 WRC plus probably
Yeah.
producing, and he's probably getting on base at a 350 clip. So
Right.
I mean, I do think there was some bad batted ball. Like you look at the average launch angle being exactly the same, the barrel rate not far off, like hard hit rate exactly the same. Which just seems like a weird year. And I think a guy like Nimmo earns the benefit of the doubt with what he has done pretty consistently when he's on the field.
I think so. We're going to get to 15 and wrap up 15 through 11 in a moment. Before that, one more quick break. Number 15 on this list is another Baltimore Oriole. So they have two of the top 20. It's Colton Cowser. Colton Cowser was one of the best rookies in Major League Baseball last year, was in a weaker American League. I think you could make the argument that the five best rookies in Major League Baseball were all in the National League, but Cowser, Heel, Wells, Wilyer, Abreu, those were probably the core four in the American League. Cowser last year, 153 games in his age 24 season, a long overdue first MLB season, I do think. Colton Cowser, a 31% K rate, but hit the crap out of the ball. 24 homers, drove in 69, had nine bags. It was a 120 WRC plus, and he was a good defender in the corner. A 4-win season in his rookie year as a 24-year-old. You really liked Cowser after he was drafted out of Sam Houston State,
Yeah.
and this was a guy that hit the ground running. And I feel like we initially clowned the pick because it's, oh, why do you underslot a top five pick? Why do they keep doing this? Why do they do it with Kerstad? Why do they do it with Cowser? Sometimes it just works and we should shut up.
That this was a guy that when he got a few professional games under his belt and I started to see what was going on there, it was so easy to fall in love with the game. But I don't know if I ever pictured him being this good of a defender. Where like you mentioned, good defense in a corner, but he played a fair amount of center field when they needed him to, also, and held it down. He played about league average center field. I think you could even argue it was slightly above that. And that is what kind of catapulted him for me a little bit in terms of I think he should have been the rookie of the year. I understand that he slowed down in the second half. So did Luis Heel. So did Austin Wells. Everyone kind of does in their rookie season. I think with what Cowser was able to do, playing a really high level corner and then plugging in at center for what was it, 40 something games? Like
Yeah.
that was impressive to me. Then on top of that, you talk about the power, like 24 home runs, but the raw power being there. I mean, this guy hit the ball hard consistently. The 120 WRC plus, a 4-win season as a rookie. I thought he should have got it, especially because of the fact that he moved around to all three. And that's why I was the high guy ranking him 12th. The low guy was Leo ranking him 18th. But again, consensus top 20 guy for us here.
Yeah.
The swing and miss is definitely one thing to monitor here. I also think if you shelter him from lefties a little bit more and he was playing, every day, which is great to see in general, that strikeout rate is going to sit more in the high 20s. But also that's a wrinkle where if he can even just get to passable against lefties, and he was close to it, he was probably about league average. So it's maybe a little harsh. Left on left to 657 OPS, probably very close to the league average. Left on left, maybe a little bit above that. But if you can swing and miss a little bit less against lefties, the defensive value you get, the ability to plug into center, some speed as well, that is an underrated aspect of his game. He's a really well-rounded outfielder with just I think the one bugaboo just being the swing and miss. But again, I think you can mitigate that enough.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I'm excited to see what Cowser can do, and I'm excited to see him really settle into a role full time. And I love that he can plug in and be good in center field. But I'm excited to see Cedric Mullins handle that until Enrique Bradfield is ready.
Yeah.
And then I think Bradfield is their everyday center fielder, and Cowser can be one of their building blocks in a corner. And I think when you commit that guy, when you commit somebody like that to a corner, not only are they going to get more comfortable and just flat out better defensively, I think they can almost calm down a little bit offensively, and that's where 90% of their energy goes instead of 70% of their energy, and they're still trying to, deal with playing a corner outfield spot or a center field spot at the major league level. You give this guy a regular spot. He's your everyday left fielder. He's your everyday right fielder, wherever they want to put him. I assume it's going to be right. All of a sudden, like Brandon Hyde can untense his shoulders and he can just, hey, Colton, you're in right every day unless something is terribly wrong and you tell me. And Cowser can personally say, okay, I'm going to be in right. We're good. Let me just focus on offensive adjustments that can get me to unlock that next level of my game.
100%. And I think there's just more in there in terms of you talk about like I think he might be one of the more underrated physically, like tools wise in
Yeah,
Major League
dude.
Baseball.
Yeah.
Because this is a guy that is a comfortably above average runner. I think it's not far off from plus speed. He has one of the strongest arms in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
So again, like that's a really interesting wrinkle into that. He hits the ball really hard. And again, we talked about just the reads and routes and everything. Like I do think the tools are very underrated with a Cowser who's only going to hit the ball harder, and I think only going to level up and tap into those tools more consistently in games. It just comes down to the whiff, and again, especially against righties, I think he can mitigate that. I'm really excited for. We talk about sophomore slumps and everything like that. Could happen with Cowser, but I also think we could see him take another step forward next year and solidify himself as a consensus top 15, maybe even close to top 10, corner outfielder in this game.
Hope so, man.
Next guy I definitely think can do that this coming season. Wyatt Langford checks in at 14 from the Texas Rangers. And Langford was not hot out of the gate, but like, how could you be considering how quickly he flew through the minor leagues as a guy that barely played any games in the minors, period, and still turned in a really good season overall. 253, 325, 415 slash line, a 110 WRC plus, 16 home runs, 19 stolen bases. He drove in 74, only struck out 20.6% of the time. But where Langford really stands out, and I think a reason why he ends up getting put pretty high on this list is not because of how his numbers cumulatively at the end of the year stack up to some of the other guys that are behind him had maybe better numbers when you look back at the entirety of the season. But we have are always known how good Langford is. He's a guy that could be an MVP candidate if it all comes together. Was 22 last season, again skipping through the minor leagues, and then you saw him start to settle in and become Wyatt Langford in the second half specifically. Final 50 games of the season, he had an OPS right around 815, but then you look at the final 35 games of the season, holy crap, did he really start to settle in? 282, 365, 550 slash line. That's a 914 OPS, 9 home runs there. And then
Um,
he just sprinted through the tape.
can I
Sprinted through the tape.
Yeah, can I tell you, it got better as like the more you condense that sample. Let's just look at September. Wyatt Langford played 26 games in September. He had 100 ABs in the month of September, 300 with seven doubles, eight homers, 20 ribbies in 26 games, 7 for 7 in the stolen base department, 300 with a 996 OPS over his final 100 ABs.
Yeah.
I'm the high guy on Langford. I'm as bullish on him as really anybody in Major League Baseball this year. I think this guy will enter the Chorio
Yep.
conversation when we're talking about okay, we're in the 5 to 6 corner outfield range where you're not Tucker, you're not Soto, you're not Judge, but you're next, and you might
Yep.
be flirting with the Tatis range, and that is fun. That's rarefied air.
And I love what you point out. It's just like yeah, it's just got better and better and better. And sometimes it's just a player was hot in the last couple of weeks and it bolsters the numbers over the last few months. And then the more you shrink the sample, the more it benefits your narrative. But I think it's the same thing with Langford that we saw with Chorio. Young bat, got his feet wet in the first half, and then really settles in. And I think the swing decisions back that as well, right? Where he was very patient throughout the year, but you started to see the swing decisions just get to another level where over those final 50 games, the chase rate creeps closer to 20%. And then over the final 35 games, that chase rate was below 20%. And it just kept shrinking. So the at bats are more comfortable. He's seeing balls better and he's getting that A plus swing off more consistently. And that's where we're seeing him pull homers, nine of them in those final 35 games. So, I mean, this guy settled in. And I think the biggest part too is if there was one maybe aspect of his game where it was lagging behind, it was the defense. Remember, he got
Yeah,
to UF as a catcher at the
you're
beginning,
right.
didn't even play much his freshman year. And so a late bloomer in terms of offensive ability, but that also caused him to not have a ton of reps relative to a lot of his peers in the outfield, then skips through the minor leagues. So he was a little rough with the reads and routes through the minor leagues when I saw him. And to get to the point where he graded out as a well above average defender in the corner, and he played a little bit in center and actually was fine there too. So he might end up becoming a solid defender in center field as well. They don't need him because they got Carter there, but just
Yeah.
knowing that you have a guy that can get by there too, this could be a superstar in the making. And I'm really excited to see how he follows up that hot finish to the season.
Yeah, I don't really think I'm exaggerating here where I don't even know if he got hot. I think he got right at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the
He
season because
became Wyatt
that's
Langford.
Langford.
Yeah. Yeah. That might just be why. Same with Chorio, like where that wasn't just a hot hitter. That was a guy coming into his own.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm really excited to see what Langford can do in 2025. Let's get to number 13. And number 13 is Anthony Santander of the Toronto Blue Jays. And Santander and Langford being stacked. Number one is hilarious. Number two, shout out the Baltimore Orioles. They are all over this thing
Yeah.
right now. This was a slam dunk signing for Toronto after missing on all of the guys that we're talking about on Sasaki, on all these big money guys, on Soto when they were involved there. They needed Santander, and Santander met them with a bunch of deferred money, but that's okay. Anthony Santander in 2024, it was a 235, 308, 506 slash. K rate was under 20%, 44 homers, 102 driven in. He was only a 3.3 win player, and it was a 129 WRC plus. It was actually one off his high that came in the COVID shortened 2020 season, where he hit 11 homers in 37 games. But Santander, 33 homers in 22, 28 homers in 23, 44 homers in 2024. Is it going to dip closer to 30 than 45 in 2025? If I were a betting man, yes. Does he lack some defensive ability that could be very useful for an aging outfield in Toronto? Yes. Do they need him in a corner? No, not really. With Loperfido, Varsho will see him back at some point. It sounds like he's going to miss a month or so. I would love to see him and Springer just kind of give each other days off in the outfield and like, hey, DH,
Hey, how you
take
feeling today, buddy? Honestly, not great. All right, I'll take it today.
right. Teamwork
Yeah,
makes the dream work. I think he and Springer are going to be communication is going to be really key between those two. I think, but I'm excited to see how Santander fits in this lineup. And Ross Atkins needs to make a pitch to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This is
please.
how the pitch starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think they're done, right? They reportedly have, offers in on potentially more of the top end remaining free agents. That's why we said, okay, you've tried to corral a star. You haven't been able to do it if you're the Blue Jays because of where you're at compared to the other teams you're competing with. Go get probably one of the more impactful tier two guys out of
Yeah.
the available free agents. And it's weird to call a guy that hit 44 a tier two guy, but just kind of based on what you can probably expect moving forward. Not quite on the same level as some of the guys that they were chasing after. And that's more of a testament to how good the top end of this free agent class was. But go get a guy that you're hoping can repeat 40. Is he going to do it? Probably not. But if he hits you 30 plus, you don't have a lot of guys that you can even count on to do that in the lineup. We were talking about there's some fun young players, but they clearly want to be competitive sooner rather than later and try with the core that they have and some of the older arms that they have. This is a guy that can help you do that. We're talking about hard hit launch angle, and that's just something that when you see a breakout of a hitter, from a power perspective, and it wasn't a breakout because we've seen him hit 30 before, but to get past 40, that's just an entirely different threshold.
Yeah.
He found a way to hit the ball hard in the air without it compromising his bat to ball, right? We didn't see him swing and miss much at all last year, sub 20%, strikeout rate, but he upped his hard hit launch angle, which again is like the median launch angle on batted balls, 95 plus miles per hour. Very important when you're hitting it as hard as you
Right.
can, or at least when you're hitting it harder than normal.
You want
Is
him
it
to
on
be
the ground or is
nuked.
it in the air?
You're
And for
right.
a guy that just hit 40 plus, you love to see that kind of sustainable adjustment, and that hard hit launch ankle jump by 5 degrees. That justifies what he did. Maybe not getting hot when you're at the pitch at the hitter's parks or whatever it may be. This is a guy that adjusted his angle a little bit and didn't whiff more. Generally, more loft can come with more whiff. Didn't happen for him. So I think that part of it is really encouraging. You just hope that the chase doesn't take him out. And that's always kind of been what results in the volatility, I think, is not the bat to ball, it's more the chase. And if anything.
Give me a guesstimate of home runs for 2025. Like
I
the first number that comes to my mind is 34.
Yeah, because it was 33 in 2022. It was 28 in 2023, and then he got 44 this past year.
I don't think he's under 28. I
I don't
struggle to
either.
see a world where he's under 28. If he plays a whole season, this is health dependent.
I think 32. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm like 30, the low 30s, just below 35, but I think north of 30. I think he's
Which
gonna be
is
right in the
which is
sandwich.
fine. Like
That's
I
what you're
just
paying him
wonder
to do.
where yeah, it's awesome, but like I wonder where the OPS is going to sit
That's the
if it's
thing.
34 homers.
A 308 OBP it really holds down the numbers there. Like he slugged 506 and
Yeah.
still barely eclipsed an 800 OPS.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes me nervous is like you got to hit 40 to get over that, but just a slight uptick in the on base percentage. And again, the contact rates aren't bad, and he's able to offset that, right? Where he got on base at a 325 clip in 2023. That would be probably enough to offset maybe a dip in home runs a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of crazy. 308 OBP when you're hitting 44 bombs. Like pitchers aren't really wanting to groove one into you. They're going to be a little bit more careful with you, and you're still getting on base at a 308 clip. Like it's interesting, but he might be a guy that maybe got a little bit affected with a lower batting average in general too. But then you look
Yeah.
at the career numbers, 246. He's kind of always going to be a guy that's in the 230, 240 range. That's
hmm
fine if you're hitting 35. So there's volatility to the profile, but I think you can feel good about him hitting 30 this coming season.
I think so.
Number 12. I can't believe how high he is, and I love it. I'm not disagreeing with it. People have really come around to him quickly. And talk about a swing adjustment piece, which is one of my favorite that I put together in a while. Lawrence Butler of the Athletics checks in at number 12. And Lawrence Butler, this was a second half breakout. And one of my favorite pieces I put out. So if you want to read that swing breakdown and that analysis, just Google probably my name and Lawrence Butler, and I'm sure the article will come up. I think that's probably the easiest way to find it, but we can link it in the episode description as well. What he did after making that adjustment, the numbers were crazy. And so much so that even after a slow start, cumulatively, he put up a 262, 317, 490 slash line, a 130 WRC plus, a 3.3 F4, 22 home runs, 18 stolen bases as well. I mean, this is a hitter that, I mean, we saw him get sent down early in the season, right? Like this is a guy that was going back and forth because it didn't look great out of the gate. And then by the second half was one of the better hitters in Major League Baseball, like just point blank. And that's the craziest part. You go from a guy that, and that's why I love this sport. You go from a guy that was sent down and trying to fight his way back up and not even putting up the best numbers in the PCL to a guy that is super comfortable at the big league level.
Yeah.
From July 2nd onward, this is a big sample size. This is 73 games. From July 2nd onward, this dude slashed 302, 346, 597, a 90th percentile exit velocity of nearly 107 miles per hour. He hit 20 home runs in that span. He was a monster. And I think you can count on him being a big piece of the Athletics' future. The defense, I think, will come along a little bit more in a corner. He's too athletic for it not to. But this guy hits the crap out of the ball and made some changes to allow himself to make more contact as well. Lawrence Butler is here to stay.
I'll say it. I think he might be a breakout for the 2025 season.
That was real good. People were, I get being annoyed about like the league's account highlighting a guy to break out that
When he already broke out.
but it was a very harsh, like a harsh reaction, I would say from everybody.
A harsher, getting on them for the Lawrence Butler thing or getting on the shredder for Bobby Witt Jr. I think
No,
the shredder.
that was deserved. That was 100% deserved. 100% deserved.
You say like kind of shocked with how high he is, but oh look, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions, all of us are high on Lawrence Butler. So when all of us are high on Lawrence Butler, this is what happens. Like you mentioned the high grades across the board. I mean, Peter had him at 12. Fink had him at 11, man. It's not us. You were the second lowest guy on him
Which
at
is crazy.
14, and you wrote the article. Also, I searched Aram Leighton Lawrence Butler. It's the first thing that came up. But when I got to Aram Leighton LA, it auto-populated Aram Leighton lawsuit. So I searched,
Oh, you
and I was
wish.
like, is there something here? Are there skeletons I don't
You
know
wish.
about?
You
No
wish.
news found. No news
No,
found. So we're good.
I'm squeaky clean, baby. But no, so I'm looking at it right now. I pulled up the piece because our video editor extraordinaire, Peyton Genus, will always help me with these where I want to have the side by side slow mo.
Yeah.
And it really is night and day. I mean, Butler always relied on his athleticism in the box. And so he was a guy that started upright, but would really push forward. Like it would be a hovering leg kick, and he'd push forward and be lungy. And it's kind of like the Corbin Carroll conversation, not that dramatic, but he would land and his feet would be pretty wide. And so you're already just kind of pushing towards the ball. And then you look at the swings now. And again, if you can click the article and watch the side by side, it is nuts where he's same, maybe even a little bit more upright, but the way that he gets into the backside and holds it and doesn't overstride. So when he's landing, he's still in a more upright, taller position. That's where he's able to actually utilize the bat speed. And you just see him rotating more tight. It's like that tight turn. You'll hear hitters talk about tight turn a lot. If you try to turn from a wide position, it's going to be a wider turn with the barrel. Whereas if you're turning from a taller position, but you're involved in engaging your lower half, it's going to be that tight, quicker turn. And the results batted ball wise were crazy. And he was able to handle velocity way more. He was able to make more consistent contacts against secondaries. And just one quick thing on the secondaries. This is his numbers for sliders and changeups from the beginning of the season to June 30th. And this was including I believe it was including the minor league stints as well. And I picked these dates because I saw the swing adjustment situation. Like I saw the mechanics shift consistently at the start of July. So after I saw those changes, I pulled the numbers against sliders and changeups from March 28th to June 30th, he had a 404 OPS, a 56% contact rate, a 35% chase rate, and 86 mile per hour average exit velocity. From July 2nd to September 25th, against sliders and changeups, a 921 OPS, a 69% contact rate, a 21% chase rate, and a 91 mile per hour average exit velocity. So he saw his average EV jump by 5%. He cut his chase rate by 14%. He increased his contact rate by 13%, and his OPS jumped by 517 points. That's a pretty large sample. We're talking 70 plus games
Yeah.
here. When you're not lunging at the ball, you got more time to see it. And then, of course, you
Right.
got way more strength behind you. Those numbers are hard to deny. And I could do the same thing with numbers against velocity, too. When you're going and pushing towards the baseball,
Yeah.
bat drags, velo eats you up. His OPS against 93 plus jumped by nearly 500 points as well in the same span. And his contact rate jumped by 10%. His slow on contact by 300 points. I'm rattling, just rambling, but all of that to say, massive shifts across the board, backed by
Yeah.
mechanical adjustments that suit the timeline to a T. It's real. He's going to keep doing this.
I love it. I also like, I will say we just had the sexier conversation. We're going to end on number 11, who is Ian Happ of the Chicago Cubs. And it's not a sexy conversation with
For
Ian
all the
Happ
right reasons, I would
for,
say.
for all the right reasons. And I'm just looking at the last 3 years, man. And I'll walk through his age 27, 28, and 29 seasons. 22, 23, 24. These are the years that I'm talking about. OBP, 342, 360, 341. Slug, 440, 431, 441. WRC plus overall, 122, 120, 122. WAR, 3.7, 3.4, 3.6. He's had the same year each of the last 3 years, and he's been really good. He's a 3.5 win player. So, where do you rank a 3.5 win player? And you know you're getting exactly that. He has won gold gloves. Does he grade out
Yeah.
as a gold glove defender? No, he doesn't. But he's sure-handed enough out there for the Cubs to feel very comfortable with him being their everyday left fielder. 2024, 243, 341, 441 slash. But Ian Happ, like again, where do you value a 3.5 win player? Leo had him at 7. Peter had him at
Wow.
17. Like we were as spread out on Hap as really anybody on this list, except for Profar having or Peter having Profar unranked.
Isn't it funny how the most consistent players can somehow be the most polarizing?
Yeah, dude, because
Because
it's like, okay, how many guys are you optimistic about clearing 3.5 wins versus guys that you're like, it's a bullish and bearish conversation, and then it's like, okay, well, where's the barometer falling?
I'll tell you what, I think more often than not, unfortunately, in the sport of failure, um, you're going to end up being wrong about the guy you're bullish on than the guy you're bearish on. I
Yeah,
feel like it's just because it's so hard. I think there's a huge value to knowing what you're getting, and it's got to be a guy that's in the top 15. Top 10, number 7. Leo really likes knowing what you can get, which I respect that.
I
And I was
respect
thinking
it.
about it contractually. Like Tyler O'Neill has had a season that, so not contractually, before I get to that, Tyler O'Neill has had a season that is, in terms of WAR value, almost as good as 2 Ian Happ seasons.
Yeah,
But he's also had seasons that don't even sniff an Ian Happ season based on availability and just a WAR output. So that part is fascinating to me, right? And Ian Happ, 3 years, $61 million. O'Neill, 3 years, 49 and a half.
yeah.
Would you, it's like, it's what kind of, it's like a personality
I,
test.
I
Who do
know,
you
and
pick?
that's exactly why I go with the Ian Happ contract. I think the Cubs have two of those deals, man. I think they have that with Nico Horner as well, where you know
Hmm.
what you're getting, and I'm gonna pay what I'm getting.
Yep. And I think that's why they can actually shoot for a little volatility here and there. And I think that's why PCA was such a welcomed, aspect because offensively
Let's
his
get
ceiling could
weird.
be
Yeah,
it could be crazy, but it also it could be a little bit frustrating.
yeah.
But you know what you're getting with Dansby. There's definitely a type there. But I think with Hap, like I side with the you're getting not only 3.5 wins. How about the availability, man? Since really 2020, which we had the shortened season. 2021 148 games, 2022 158 games, 2023 158 games, and 2024 153 games. The other side of it too, outs above average, like range stats don't love him, but you mentioned shorthanded and stuff. He makes all the catches he needs to make. DRS loves him. He gives you some value out there that I think maybe is beyond the analytics that we like to look at, and he's just never going to hurt you out there. So I think you can count on Hap just continuing to be who he is, and I think coming off of a year where he was arguably as good as ever, when you look at a lot of the other stats, you got to have him in the top 15 for sure.
I think so. So again, 20 through 11, we're doing 10 to 1 on Wednesday. 20 was Jurickson Profar of the Braves, 19 Brian Reynolds of the Pirates, 18 Tyler O'Neill of the Orioles, 17 was Randy Arozarena of the Seattle Mariners, 16 Brandon Nimmo of the Mets, 15 Colton Cowser of Baltimore, 14 Wyatt Langford of the Rangers, 13 Anthony Santander of the Blue Jays, 12 was Lawrence Butler in Sacktown, and number 11 was Ian Happ of the Chicago Cubs. I have a last word, and I got this from. Did I get it from Culture Crave on Twitter? I think I did
I don't
get
know
it
what
from
that is.
Culture Crave. It's like pop bass and all that stuff, where it's like you just
Oh,
get
like those
pop
just like
culture updates.
it's kind of like aggregate accounts in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Dov Kleiman of like
Oh
non-sports
gosh.
stuff. But
Yes.
Culture Crave said Barnes and Noble is adding 60 new stores in 2025. I was
Why?
stunned to
Are
see
books
that.
back?
Major factor in the bookstore revival has been TikTok. The major TikTok community is called Book Talk. There's an Axios article about this.
I thought it
Books are
was rotting the
back.
kids' brains.
No, I guess not, man. I like people like books, and I will say my fiance is sitting in the other room right now on her, I think, sixth book of
Oh, I know,
2025.
dude. Same story here. I mean, Ellie's reading books all the time. I can't tell you the last book I've read cover to cover. And honestly, that's my last word on top of that. If you're a reader, it's a great gift. If you buy somebody a book that doesn't actively read,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of can be a dick move. So I appreciate the gesture, but then you're going to ask me what I think of the book. You assigned me homework. I don't want to read. If I wanted to read,
And
I would read. I appreciate the gesture. It looks great on my mantle. And when people walk in, they'll think I'm smart. But then they
yeah.
end up looking and saying, "Oh, what'd you think of that one?" "Oh yeah, it was really informative. Great leadership skills I got from that book." But like, it's assigning homework to a degree, and I don't. I'm kind of done with that. I didn't even do it when it was assigned homework.
Okay, so I get it. Also, I got a text from Isabel. She said seventh book, and then in another text, LOL, all undercase. I'm like, okay, good, yeah, great, congrats, you read, awesome.
Yeah, right.
No, but I
Good to
ran
know.
into
I'll
it.
buy her a book.
Yeah, similar thing. I saw Famous Dave's pop up, and I tweeted about that. I was like, I had no idea they were still in the growth phase, Famous Dave's. Although it feels like books can make an easier revival than a Famous Dave's can. But yeah, like I've been peppering you to read The Arm by Jeff Passan. I got to read the Sadaharu O book that I know you read and I know Griffin Conine
That's the
read.
only thing, and I didn't finish it, but that's the only book I've read multiple chapters of, I think, in a long time. I'll
And
read everything else, like online, article, whatever, but books, that's just not my thing anymore. I don't
she
know.
she is she's like inspiring me to read, and I've heard too many positive reviews of The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galway. I don't and it's listen, so it's The Inner Game of Tennis, the classic guide to the mental side of peak performance. So it is tennis based, but it's all about like what goes into peak performance, what goes into competitive fire. So I I will read that and hold me to that in like a month, check in with me and say, hey
Oh, I
Jack,
will.
how was the
I
inner
get,
game of tennis?
I'll treat it like I bought it for you and just check in every time. So what do you think about it now? What do you think about it now?
Okay.
I didn't get to it. My next flight, I'll be all over it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need to invest in the audiobook for a couple of these, but um, that's all I got. Only other thing I'll say is I'm very excited for social media tomorrow, and that's all I'm gonna say. And it's the only time in my life. That's all, or today, I should say. I'm very excited for social media today, as people are listening to this.
No,
That's
probably
all.
gonna be Tuesday, Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it then.
Yeah, at some point. All right, we'll talk to you guys soon.